Donald Trump is set to once again be inaugurated, I beg your pardon, as the President of the United States. His return to the White House raises several questions about what his leadership will look like this time around. These are live visuals for you from the U.S. Capitol. So with the benefit of hindsight, will he take advantage of the second term to be more efficient in implementing his policies? How will his approach to governance differ from the first term? And what impact will this have on both domestic and global politics? Let's unpack all of this. Bring in for you political analyst Professor Gilbert Khadiagala, who's actually with the Wits University. Prof, great to see you as always. Thanks very much indeed for making time. And yet another historic chapter for the United States as we count down to that inauguration later on today. You know, Trump is seen generally as quite a divisive individual, but it seems most people across the political spectrum agree he's the type of person who will see through some of the commitments he's made. I wonder if that gives you comfort or concern in the lead up to his presidency.
I think there is both concern and comfort in the sense that this will be a continuation of the first Trump administration. That means he wants to carry his agenda to the very end, because he feels like he was denied the victory the last time. So he's coming in with the energy that, you know, my rule, I was denied my second presidency, now he's gotten it. But I think the more positive issue about Trump is that as he's gotten older, I think he's going to mellow. I think he's going to come up with policies that may be a repetition of the last, but they will be much more kinder, gentler. I think he's made a lot of threats, but I don't think there are the resources. He has the resources to implement a lot of these grandiose programs that he has announced, such as mass deportation of illegal migrants from the United States. I think he will deport a few people, maybe the criminals, but I don't think it's going to be as huge as he has been proclaiming. I think, so there's going to be a very different kind of Trump who gets to the White House. And I think he's also worried about his legacy. So this gives him an opportunity to begin to undo some of the mistakes probably he made in the first administration. So that is the more positive element of it. Right. Somebody who wants to leave a legacy, somebody who wants to leave America, they say, great again. I don't know whether that can be done in 4 years, but we'll see from the policies he announces from today.
Sure. As fate would have it, of course, there are several historic moments unfolding as we count down to his inauguration. The first is what's taking place in the Middle East, that very fragile ceasefire is how it's being described between Israel and Hamas. But I want to start by just speaking about the issues to do with TikTok, especially because of just how many people rely on it in the US, and the fact that, interestingly enough, the Chinese president has been invited to today's inauguration. How do you see those dynamics landing in the hours ahead?
The ban on TikTok went into effect yesterday, but there is a provision that it can be extended. It can be extended for 90 days. That means TikTok can continue to operate as the discussions about ownership continue. Biden didn't want to make that decision about continuing for TikTok to continue to operate. So he left it to Trump. I think the most important issue today is going to unban the decision. So TikTok is going to start to operate, I think, maybe from tomorrow. I think it will be a very popular move on his part, particularly since he wants to appeal to a wider majority of the young Americans who are into TikTok. So I think it will be a good thing for him to unban TikTok. And of course, as you said, the Chinese vice president has been invited to the occasion. So I think it's going to be a more reconciliatory approach by Trump, in fact, towards the Chinese, that they have been invited to this event. and maybe he may unban the ban on TikTok, and maybe the other issues can be discussed, issues around the tariffs and all these economic wars that he has announced that he's going to fight with the Chinese. So I see that as a good entry point. TikTok as a good entry point into a kind of rapprochement with the Chinese.
Interesting indeed. Speaking about who's been invited, I've seen there's a bit of commentary around whether or not any heads of state from the African continent have made the cut. Our very own Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't seem to have. And in fact, this will conjure up, of course, the sentiments that Donald Trump once shared about what he thinks of African nations, a term I can't repeat on air if I want to keep my job. To what extent do you reckon there's going to be any kind of attention on Africa during the second term? And what do we read into the fact that there isn't any African head of state who's been invited today?
I think two things here. One, typically inaugurations are really an American affair, a very domestic affair. So it's very rare even for heads of state from other countries to be invited. The fact that he's begun to invite some of his good friends is actually a big change. So, but it's usually to celebrate the triumph of American democracy and to celebrate a big momentous event like an election. So the invitation, I don't put a lot of premium on the invitation or lack of it, of African leaders or whoever. As I said, it's a very short event. And then after he leaves, after he's inaugurated, he's going to talk to his supporters. He may not even have time, even if Ramaphosa were there, to say hello to him. So I think there are other occasions that are more momentous, more eventful for African leaders to want to go to Washington and talk to Trump about, but not today. The other point I wanted to make is that on African policy, I don't really think there's going to be much change. Trump had expressed interest, rather lack of interest in Africa, and I don't think there are any signs to indicate that he's going to shift dramatically. The only thing he may do at this point is to begin to appoint the group that is going to lead on African foreign policy much earlier than he did the last time. You remember the last time even ambassadors were appointed in the third year. So that means almost a year before he leaves power. I think there may be a change now where he brings in a very quick team to deal with African issues, but I don't really think he's going to be as interested in Africa as we know that he's not interested. But the other good thing is that he has Mark Rubio, who is the new Secretary of State, and I think he has an interest in Africa. So that's going to make a big difference, I think.
Well, maybe we can expect him in Johannesburg later this year as part of the G20 group of nations. But time will tell, as they say. Professor Khadiagala, thanks very much indeed, as always, for your insights. Really do appreciate it. Something tells me we'll have many other opportunities to just make sense of Trump's decisions, given the 5 years that lie ahead. That is Professor Gilbert Khadiagala, who is, of course, part of Wits University, speaking to us there in his capacity as a political analyst.